pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, all members are present except for Greg.
I'm surprised.
Minutes of January 20th. Does everyone have those minutes?
Yes.
And I've had a chance to read them. Is there a motion to accept the minutes? Is there a second? I'll second. Any discussion?
Are we looking at both minutes for
So far,
January 20th?
right.
Okay.
No discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And John abstains. Minutes of February 17th. Everyone have those minutes?
Yes.
Do you need a copy?
Is there a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. I
Opposed?
abstain.
And one
Very.
abstention. All right, is there any public comment? No public comment. Finance Director report.
Good evening. We have, there's several meetings here now.
Yep.
Been talking about project to send out RFPs for a new accounting system. And we have, what I am passing out now is a proposal from Blue Shapiro. Their consulting arm. They have an auditing arm and a consulting arm. This is their consulting arm, which would be phase one, for phase one of the project, which would be to evaluate our current staff and processes and how we do our accounts payable, accounts receivable, revenue, expenditures, checks, and document that. And then, you know, go through what products are currently available and draft an RFP.
I'm gonna. Okay.
Sorry.
Could you pass that? Hi, Brad.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I did. 45 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, and so this would take us through drafting a request for proposals for new systems and helping us with the selection of a product and a firm. Now, that would be the end of this particular contract. If we wished to engage them for phase two, which would be implementing, installing and implementing the system, then that would be a separate contract. I'm not expecting the board to take any action on this tonight. I'd appreciate it if you could look it over before your next meeting and perhaps consider an appropriation out of undesignated fund balance for this. As you know, we have a grant application pending with OPM, which would be at a minimum 15,000, so that would cover most of this. But I haven't heard anything about that yet. Hope to hear soon. But in the meantime, clock's ticking. This is a project that's gonna take us multiple years to implement and to do it correctly. So, you know, again, I would appreciate your consideration, but read it through. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Carl's been very involved and met, and as has Bob, met with Jeff Ziplo from Bloom Shapiro, the consultant who would be working with us on this. You know, this is not something that we would be able to do in-house. We just don't have that kind of expertise, particularly on the technical side of things. And we want to make sure when we do this, you know, we've had our current system for 10 years. I hope when we do it, we keep it, or we buy a system that we can keep upgraded and, you know, that we won't be looking at this kind of expenditure 10 years from now.
So we expect the grant ultimately will probably pay for all of this. We're hopeful to get more than 15,000. We should get at least 15,000. Lisa is surprised we haven't even heard yet. So that's number one. And then in the budget, we have asked for, from capital non-recurring, an appropriation towards the system, which should be funded most likely over 2 years. This is not, you know, it was a little shocking to me a little bit. It's not a short process. This is a long process, and it's a very involved process. And that's why you do hire a consultant. He came in and did a presentation for us, and quite frankly, at some point, probably would be willing to come down and give a presentation to this board, which I think you probably find pretty interesting. Ultimately, the goal here is to create efficiencies in our financial office. And it may involve some staff changes at some point. And this would probably allow us to do that. I'm not going to elaborate any more on that right now because nothing is imminent for July 1 that is reflected in the budget that will be before you tonight. So, but it's a planning tool. You know, Bob, quite frankly, and many of you on this board have stated for years and years, there's way too much institutional knowledge sitting across the table from you. And a lot of that can be rectified with the way we're trying to move forward. And this is part of the puzzle. So.
Okay. And the RFP for auditing services, which you approved, I think, at your last meeting, went out. What I did was mail to all the firms that are currently auditing any towns in the state of Connecticut. So that was 14 firms. I'm already getting some interest, some questions, some phone calls. So that's a good thing. The bids are to be opened on Monday, March 30th at 2 o'clock. Certainly if anybody's interested, and we'll open them here in the conference room. But I want the board to start thinking, if we get 2 or 3, where you're gonna wanna see all those firms, you know, how we're gonna wanna process. If we get more than that, you're gonna want Carl and Bob and I perhaps to winnow it down. You wanna have a subcommittee. I mean, you don't have to decide right now, but start thinking of how you wanna, because it's gonna be a short, and you're also dealing with the budget, it's gonna be a short period of time, because you're gonna have to pick a firm before or at your June 2nd meeting. So, in order for us to keep dates going, to be on time with the audit, so.
So, great job soliciting. Last time we just put it out to bid, I think, when we got 2, but going and figuring out who does audits for every municipality in the state of Connecticut and soliciting them, I think is a great idea.
And it's on our website, it's on the DAS, the state website.
And that was
And it's
Lisa.
gonna be advertised this week in the
Yeah.
Middletown Press, so we're
There is
definitely
interest.
covering
We
every
had someone
base,
come personally
so.
pick it up. Well, Shapiro's interested. I mean, you're gonna get 5, I think, which is a lot more than we got last time. I hope. Lisa thinks that's the most we'll possibly get, so, and then we'll figure out how the decision tree will go from there, whether you want 5 or whether you want 2 or 3.
Last time we had that, right?
Yeah,
I was surprised because we said, oh, there's only 2 in the state, and we're not, we're that many,
You
we
know-
come up with 14, good job, Lisa.
yeah, I agree, Barry, good job.
Yeah, there's actually like 16, a couple of them were out of state, believe it or not, so I didn't bother to send to those. And of those 14, some of them only do like kind of local area, small towns, so I would imagine we won't hear from them. But I'd say there's a good half a dozen that do, you know, at least 5 towns and decent sized towns, you know, so we'll see. As I said, I'm already getting questions, that's a good sign that people are interested.
We'll get some, it'll be good, it'll be interesting. And we notified Cone Resident, sent them the RFP and said, you know, by the way,
Welcome up.
just so you know, this is what we're doing,
Didn't get a
please bid.
response, so.
And did what?
I didn't get a response.
Yeah,
unless
well,
you
they
did,
have it.
so.
You know, they know, they get that every day of the week, right? So
Lisa,
they're professionals.
on this from Lump Shapiro, are there any other consulting firms out there that perform this kind of consulting for accounting systems?
There probably are.
These guys are the only ones that replied to.
I didn't put out a request for proposal. I had worked with Bloom Shapiro consulting arm in a different position that I had on a similar project. And, you know, as I said, we had them come in and speak to Carl and Bob and
Yeah,
our accounting folks.
it falls under professional services. We could select them for this phase of the project, certainly. I think beyond that, I mean, it's professional services, we can select them. And I think at this point, we're pretty comfortable with having them do it. I mean, they're pretty well-known, and I think they're quite capable of this. I'd like to, I'm comfortable with them, is what I think.
I mean, you could think the bigger firms like Price Waterhouse have consulting arms, but they don't do municipal audits. So they don't have that same kind of, you know, perspective that Bloom does. I mean, we can certainly inquire, but I don't know if it's really kind of a specialized niche with the things that we need on the government side that
Yeah.
corporate clients don't have the same, or they have different things that they need than the private sector needs.
So Lisa, I apologize if you mentioned it up front, but to read it over, is there gonna be a vote or decision?
And that next meeting.
Next meeting, okay,
Yeah, so Greg, we haven't heard about the grant yet.
yeah.
We applied for a grant, we think it'll be somewhere between 15 northward. This quote is for 19 to 21 grand. In 2 weeks, we'd like your board to consider an appropriation of not to exceed 21,000 from the unappropriated fund balance, of which 19 to 21 will be spent, and we'll get a grant which will reimburse at least 15 of that, maybe all of that.
Okay,
And so think about that.
okay, thanks, I just needed the time to.
Anything else?
No, between that and the budget, I've been a little
Any,
busy.
And the snow?
any snow now? Any questions
definitely
for Lisa?
Lisa, this is a lot more than other towns are looking at the same thing, right? Standardized that process?
Yeah, uniform chart of accounts.
Right,
so-
we're kind of taking a combination approach, but a lot of the towns are not getting a new system, but they'll get what they call bridge software. It really translates their current chart of accounts to the standardized chart of accounts. So it's really just like another program they're gonna run to make the standardized reports.
So most of the towns will look the same in the state of Connecticut, they're doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And boards of, like our Board of Education, not getting a new system, but they applied for the grant for the bridge software, which I don't know how much that is. Gosh, I would hope it isn't 15,000, if somebody's making a buck off it then, but, you know, because it's just taking one code and translating it, and that's, you know, and that's what the state has been working on.
And we're looking for additional functionality, obviously, on our system. The state has a non-mandate mandate that all towns eventually use a uniform chart of accounts, because they don't right now.
That's what I thought we were looking
Yeah.
for.
So there is this UCOA out there that is not a mandate yet, because it's pricey to do that. And so they've been hesitant to push it too hard, but they are encouraging municipalities to do this by putting out the grant money.
Right, and since we
Because they
are in
really
need of
want
a new
it done.
system anyway, we thought it was a good time to take
Oh,
advantage.
we'll probably see efficiencies on that, right?
Oh, on the new system, yes, because we do a lot of things now manually. And when Carl talks about staffing changes, doesn't necessarily mean we'll be doing with less people, but we'll take those people and they can do some higher skill things, some more analysis, some more, you know, prevent errors before, you know, they enter into the system. People can review work instead of just constantly under the weight of getting a weekly, you know, accounts payable out in a very, very manual fashion. And we currently outsource our payroll. I think with a good system, there's no reason why we can't, for the number of employees we have, do our payroll in-house. And then being able, you know, to report on, you know, the different, you know, wages and, you know, can slice and dice and report things, give people more useful information on our finances. Because right now, whenever anybody asks for anything, it's a scramble, and we usually have to massage things and put things in Excel. The system does not
Yeah, that's the
do
main
nice
reason
reporting.
that's the main reason I like to see it, because we can do more. We can answer your questions when you ask questions about what the revenue looks like on such and such an account. If you
And
go into the
FOIs will
system-
be easier too, right?
the what?
FOIs.
Now, there's a lot of things like a purchase order system that will be a lot easier to execute with a new system.
Will that be available to the taxpayers on the website? The
You want to
information,
know.
you're gonna have it on a computer, all that data?
Well, I mean, we could. I mean, certainly if the board decided, you know, I mean, currently there's a finance section that has certain, you know, has our audit, has the budget, has, you know, our official statement when we go out for bonding, has that. But yeah, if there was you know, a monthly, some of Bob's monthly reports, we could, if they were able to be generated by the system, we could post a lot on the, if we had that reporting capability that didn't require human hands to come in and, you know, gyrate the data.
But a lot of the improvement will be in eliminating the need to do things by hand. Even now when we do the audit, the financial statements, you saw how in the financial statements you have that section 4 and 5, the off-budget accounts, grouped by function. Every single one of those numbers has to be done by hand by pulling this particular fund number, this particular fund number, this particular fund number, get revenue. And do the same thing with expenses. And it's a real project to do a set of financial statements with the present system.
When will we expect this, if it goes through the way we plan, when will we expect that to be in place? Just a
Part of-
ballpark, I'm not,
Part
Yeah,
of the
no,
decision
That's
would
a good
be whether
question.
you implement January
Yeah.
1 to coincide with your wages, or whether you implement July 1st. And that's the kind of decision the consultant would help you with. But I'd
Still
say
year to
realistically, we're looking at the
Right.
end of 2016.
Yeah,
Okay.
year and a half, anyway.
So if Bob takes his knowledge base with him when he decides that it's time for him to retire,
Then we follow them down,
Yeah.
hunt 'em
and
down like a dog.
then the computer will be the only one to have the knowledge base to do this, and not anybody in the building. And secondly, Lisa, is this the computer system we talked about that is gonna do our payroll pretty soon?
Yes. Right,
And
if
if
we
we
do,
got-
we would certainly invest in something that had payroll capabilities. But part of this, Tom, is that you document, while the consultant works with us, we document the process. And as you remember, one of our audit comments was, our accounting process manual is not updated, hasn't been kept updated. So we get a document that documents everything. Bob does, Janet does, Sharon does, Lucia does, I do, and would have it in a document. So, you know, God forbid, we are all in a bus and the bus crashes, somebody could come in and say, okay, this is what you do to get the checks out, this is what you do. That's part of the process. And then, once people's time gets freed up, because we're automating things more, cross-training, we've already done a lot of cross-training, you know, over the past
Ever
year and a
since
half.
Lisa has gotten here, we've been
To make
doing
sure that
training.
when people are on vacation,
specific.
when people are out sick, like me, that the jobs, the critical things get done. And we haven't had time for that before, because everybody's just so busy getting the work out on a week-by-week basis, but we're making the time. We meet once a week to go over common things that we need to discuss and brainstorm if we've got an issue and how do we, so this will kind of tighten that and you know, take us to the next level in that documentation and cross-training.
Are we any closer to being in a bi-weekly system instead of a weekly system for payroll?
No, we still have one or two unions that have to okay that.
We'll get there.
That's our ultimate goal, though, right?
Tom, you know, yes, bi-weekly, direct deposit, email notification, like no paper. There should be no paper. That's not the way everybody lives. You'd be a little surprised at that. I mean, some people take the check and go to the bank, still. And I'm not making a judgment there, but it's a fact.
Sure.
So, but that would be with this, and all the contracts will have that negotiated in by then. We already have it in, I think, police and dispatchers. I don't know if we have it in support supervisors, but that won't be an issue. That could also, if we're ready to do it, could be a side letter in the contract, and we can get it done.
Once the new system's in place.
Right, and that.
I agree with you. I mean, when I had weekly, 1994, when I moved from New York to Connecticut, and we had weekly payroll, and I ended up doing it, I'm like, this is for the birds, weekly payroll. It's crazy. I mean, it should be, you know, it just seems like you're doing the same thing all the time when you do that.
I mean, just from 1 week to 2 weeks could be significant savings over a period of time that would help pay for the system.
Well,
There's a fair few things.
I don't think we would go to a system that only puts out checks every 2 weeks.
Right.
Right, right, right.
Right.
That's a sideline of what Lisa wants for the town for this new system altogether.
I think the significant savings would be in getting rid of a payroll processing company, period. And
A
doing-
few other things.
doing it
There's a
in-house.
few areas, I'm sure.
Other questions for Lisa? All right, thank you. Treasurer's report?
Okay, I gave you 3 things to distribute.
We did.
It's coming.
They're coming, okay.
We are distributing the three components. They all together.
One of them.
I have it. I already have it.
Okay, so we'll give you this back.
I don't know where the store is.
They're giving us 2
Got
more.
a bottleneck
Okay.
here. It's sitting right next to
That's
it.
me.
Efficiency.
One piece flow, one piece flow. One piece yes,
Anytime you want the job.
Oh, I don't want that job.
That's 2. This? Yep. And that Brad's keeping over here? All right.
Okay, the 3 things that you should have are, first, the usual treasurer's report, the
Right.
general fund analysis through February 28th. The second item will be the 100 fund revenues. I started to get some questions about revenues, and I've given you the general fund breakdown of revenues. And the third one is we'll start to get into the budget season revenues, okay? So let's start with the usual treasurer's report. The general government expenditures this time are quite normal. You know, we've got 66.67% of the year gone. The general government expenses are around 65. Same with Board of Ed. Our bonded indebtedness, we've got 90% expended. The one piece that's left is a bond payment in May that's part of the refunding of a year ago. Okay, that's why you see the 90 instead of the 98% for bonded indebtedness expenditure. It's because when we did the refunding a year ago, there was a payment then due in May that wasn't there before. So as far as I can see, everything's on budget. We've also completed the carryover expenses for the roads and sidewalks from a couple of years ago. So the expenses seem to me to be right where they should be. There's still a few line items that are running high, but there's nothing we haven't talked about before. On the revenue side, we're doing well. The taxes continue to come in, and I think the total taxes received at year end will be above budget. I think we'll again come in with something like 99.3% in current taxes, where we expect 99 in the budget. You can see that back taxes is already about twice what we budgeted. State of Connecticut revenues look less than last year, but again, it's hard. There's only a few categories, and it's always a little, the categories are different each year, and so there's not much to read into when the percentage number is a little different from last year. So far, I've gotten the Connecticut payments to Old Saybrook that I expected so far. And the local revenues are normal. They continue to run higher than last year, again, because, well, we've gone through it. The stuff that we did well in the fall with the mini golf and that sort of thing. So I again see nothing in the data that indicates that we're going to have a real problem with revenues being at least as large as expenditures. Now, the breakdown with expenses is attached to the monthly report as usual. What I did in addition, because we were starting to get questions about revenue, was to give you the equivalent breakdown of revenues. So you can see where the local revenues and the state of Connecticut revenues and the taxes actually come from.
Bob, on some of these, on the expenses, like, some things, you know, they've used 10% of their budget, so this would be the assessment appeals. Is this something where they sort of catch up at the end of the year, or?
Well, the assessment appeals don't start until this month, right?
Yeah, the window closed on February 20th for those appeals,
Okay.
so, yeah.
How about like tree warden? It's a, you know, almost
So
20%.
tree warden, funny you bring that up, I was gonna mention that as part of my report. We just went out to bid yesterday for about 15 trees to be taken down. So we're gonna expend pretty much the rest of the tree warden budget and $5,000 in Larry's Public Works tree removal budget to try to get, we have a running list of dead and diseased trees, so that budget will be expended, probably in April.
Okay.
Okay.
Are there any ones in this expenditure that you do not see, you see staying at a low? Like inlands and wetlands, 7%.
Who in the wetlands?
Yeah, they're like, expended 7%.
I think it's just a question of, certain years zoning will have a lower legal line item than other years. This year they're higher. Inland wetlands is the same thing. They can get sued. And during the preserve years, I'm sure their budget was over usually. So when that was being fought and they were being sued. Let's see.
I'm just looking at some of these low ones, just wondering how much they're gonna probably expend by year end. In just a general thought of looking at budget for next year, are they sort of back half loaded? Where they'll.
Well, in
current-
general, if the number's low, it's because the expenditure is still to come, and if it's high, it's because they're front-loaded. But there are times when, for some circumstances, they will be overspent or underspent. I have not gotten any special information that says that's true.
Yeah, I think,
Like if you look at labor and personnel, it's only 18%, because we just started last week on the dispatcher contract,
So,
which is the one that is
yeah,
open.
and even so, we're probably not, so labor and personnel, that's a good example. That's a 70, I think we have 70 in labor and personnel. That's for Pat McHale. That's usually, he negotiates our union contracts. There are some years we're gonna have union contracts and some years we're not. Usually it seems like we do. This year we're gonna have dispatchers. We will not use all that money this year, but we will next year. I can guarantee you that. On the other hand, if we catch a lawsuit that we refer to Pat McHale, even in a year where we're not doing union negotiations, he may run up a $20,000 bill. So it's hard. I think 70, I'll tell you right now, during my years on the Board of Finance, it used to go down to 25, up to 75, down to 25, up. And I've kind of tried to, with a lot of the budgets, flatline them. So that we're not spiking and we're not looking for, if you go to, if I brought that budget down to 25 this year, we might only spend 25, but if we caught a lawsuit, we were gonna be over by 20. We're probably gonna be within $20,000 of that budget this year. Next year, we'll spend it. We have several negotiations next year. It's kind of, a lot of the budgets are budgeted to actuals. There are some budgets that can fluctuate depending on the activity before the zoning board. Whether the zoning board gets an appeal, where they get, sued and then it goes to the appellate court. Whether we catch, what kind of our dispatcher negotiations may be really easy. And it may be settled for $15,000 in legal fees, so we may be in good shape there. But if it went to arbitration, it would be a lot more. How do you budget for that? And a lot of the ones you were mentioning are, I believe, are much smaller.
Yeah, they're pretty
so
small.
they're-
Yeah. No, I'm just saying in general, yeah.
Engineering, that's another one. We could be at 35 one year and at 75 the next year, depending on what projects are coming down the pike and how many, so we're just trying to get it to a realistic number every year with each department.
All right.
Okay, moving to revenues. If you look at, again, the treasurer's report on the revenue side, you can now look at this breakdown to see the particulars on budget versus actual. This is now a list of the actual revenues. The first little set is taxes. You can see current taxes are 39.5 collected. Current taxes, or back taxes are 223. We have not received telecommunication taxes yet. They always come in April. If you look at the state things so far, the ECS payments, we've gotten half of what we expect so far. We've gotten 326,000. We expect the other half of that in April again. That's just way it always happens. Town Aid Road, we've gotten everything we've expected so far. The same thing is true of money that the state gives us in lieu of taxes for state properties in Old Saybrook. The elderly property tax relief, we have received the reimbursement for that one, $75,000.
And the one you just spoke about, the state of Connecticut low of taxes, are you talking about properties like where the town garage just got torn down?
Yes, we're talking about state-owned property in the town of Old Saybrook, so it could be their new garage too.
All right, so even though they don't pay taxes, they are contributing.
Correct.
That's good.
But it's not one for one,
No, but it's
but it's some, that is.
better than zero.
Yeah.
Yeah, payment in lieu of taxes.
That's good.
It's all over the state.
How do they figure that? A percentage or?
It's a formula that they determine
And it's,
Based on
based
property
on
values?
property value.
and it's precious to many, many towns that have a lot of state. Think about the universities, Mansfield.
Right.
You know, so whenever the budget gets tight at the state level and they hear pilot, payment in lieu of taxes is up for discussion, towns freak.
Municipal revenue sharing, we have gotten what they said we would get for this year. When I say we got what they said they were gonna give us, what we get usually during the state budget process every year is information from CCM and cost on what they think each town is going to get based on where the state budget process is at that point in time. Okay? And generally CCM and cost are pretty good. There are occasions when they make a mistake because the budget isn't finalized and it gets changed before the end. A couple of years ago, this particular item, municipal revenue sharing, they told us we were gonna get 30,000 and we ended up getting 100,000. Things like that happen, but I don't see any of that this year. I see us getting exactly what we expected in our budget. The Mashantucket Pequot revenue, so far we've collected 6, I'm expecting 18.
What's that for again?
What's that?
What is that for? Why do we get that?
That's our share of revenue from the slot machines.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Declining.
Easy if you put what you
Some of that might
expected on
be
the
your
sheet
money.
as well, Bob? You know, I'm looking at the sheet and that, you know. Oh, go there.
Yeah, okay, that's the next sheet of
Okay,
paper.
all right.
Okay.
Answer my question, thank you.
And finally, you've got the miscellaneous state of Connecticut things. There's veterans exemptions and things like that on taxes that they reimburse us for. There's things like public transportation for schools and small grants is what that one is. Okay? And then the rest of it is a breakdown of our local revenues. Sure.
Why is it that, I mean, there's quite a few of them here I have questions about. Youth and family counseling,
All that is off budget now. These are all
What you're looking at
100,
is
this is
general.
100 fund revenues. The whole, everything I've talked about so far is general fund. We have a lot of different funds that are non-budget funds.
right,
A
but
lot of the revenues go there.
where do they show? Where do we see those?
We see those 2 places. Number one, I try to talk to you about those after the budget process. I come to you with a list of all the funds, and the amount of cash that's in them, and we talk about those.
But at this point, I think it'd be beneficial to know what they've taken in when we're looking at their budget.
Year to date, that would be difficult. That would be one of those things I have to do by hand.
But you can see 2014 in the audit.
Right,
So,
if you're interested in approximately what they're expecting for revenues in each case. Remember the last time we went through this audit report? I also gave you a breakdown of which fund numbers are in which column in the Schedule 4 and 5. That information on revenues is in here broken out. So you can get a feeling for everything that happens off budget if you go to your annual financial statement.
That's last year's information.
That's as of June 30th,
But that gives you a
2014.
full idea of what
Why
a
wouldn't we have, you know, I'm not picking on them, but like youth and family, I won't use the police tonight because they're here. But youth and family, as an example, they take in revenue. I don't understand why we don't know a year-to-date figures of what they've taken in.
We could. It would have, if you ask me a specific question, I can go into the accounting system and answer it. But the system that we were just talking about is one that is going to require some work to get it. If you have specific questions, I can go get them for a future meeting.
because the way the general fund is set up, revenues are separate from expenditures. In the off-budget funds, they're really on a cash basis, and their revenues and expenditures are in the same account. So literally what somebody has to do is go in, print out what it is, and, oh, actually, you can print just the
You can, yeah.
revenue, you can, but it's not separated the way it is on the general fund side, because we don't budget for those accounts, so.
No, but when you're looking at the total budget of a particular group, you know, without looking into last June's figures, I have no idea, as an example, how much youth and family took in through insurance companies,
I understand
which could be
that.
huge. So when we're looking at their budget and it's 230,000, they might take in another 200,000 through insurance companies.
Right,
If you will give me a specific question, I will answer it for you.
Okay, I'll do
but it's
that.
just gonna be
On,
revenue, Brad, it's not gonna tell, unless we follow up with Heather, it's not gonna say so much is from insurance companies, so much, Bob only knows how much is deposited in total.
Well, revenue is revenue, it's just that.
Right, all right, as long as you understand
When
that.
we're looking at what they have to have for a budget for the year, the untold story is what are they taking in?
Okay, I can
And
answer
any
that
of the-
question.
And many of these places.
Right,
If you
but they're
have a
also-
set of questions, I can answer the question.
Right, but I think we should also give you the expenditure side, because they're not just amassing the revenue,
Right.
they're also paying for clinicians and counselors out of that client, that 600
Well,
account.
I understand that, it's just that when you look at their budget and your payroll, it's, when you look at the expenses that we're giving them for the payroll, et cetera, what are they taking in also? And is that going back to the town, or is it going back to them?
Well, okay, so I think we should have Heather in, because Heather can describe.
I just used her as I can go to the school department, I can go to the police department, I can go to a lot of different departments.
Yeah, they have significant revenue, in youth and family services, and I think we've had this discussion where they have clinicians
Right,
that they partly pay in the budget and fund the rest of the position through revenues that they may get from insurance companies. So they are not amassing any sorts of large amounts of money. And I'm not saying you accuse them, you're not
no, I'm not saying,
I know you're not.
but when we're looking at our,
But
if they-
I think Heather, for that department, can probably give us a very accurate picture of what her expenditures are, what the town gives her, and what she's getting from insurance companies and how she uses it.
well, you know, I'll give you another example, just so that you're not thinking I'm picking on somebody.
I know. That is actually probably the most complicated of the departments in
The
terms of trying to
schools,
figure it out.
You know, I believe they have some people paying tuition, and yet we're seeing zero here. I believe they rent out the auditorium and the different places, and they see zeros, so, you know, why, it's not accurate information at this point.
Well, it is accurate, it's just that it's in non-budget accounts.
Yeah.
Those are all the 900 funds, or where the
So,
school
but
puts those kinds
all
of
of
money.
these funds, they go back into the general budget, or do these individual departments keep this money?
This set of revenue goes to the general fund. All the rest of it goes into those off-budget accounts.
Which we can show you the balances.
Right,
They don't close out
You're,
on June 30th like like these accounts do. So the ending balance on June 30th is their beginning balance on July 1st. The theory being money coming in is used to pay, it's a self-contained fund. What comes in, money's used to pay the expenditures of whatever that.
So who's overseeing those funds, as far as how they're spent or when they're spent? Because we're given, as an example, youth and family a budget, but then they have these other funds over here.
We monthly have that list. When we do our trial balance, it includes all the non-budget funds every month. And she and I look at those every month.
So there are some of those funds, there's many different types of those off-budget funds. For instance, Park and Rec was left a $50,000 gift to build a swimming pool. It's not happening. Okay?
You got one out front.
So,
Why not?
we're trying to work with the estate to use that money for the splash pad to do some upgrades, okay? So, but that sits off budget. And that is one of those off-budget accounts.
Or the
Yeah.
dog fund.
Yeah, I'm more
I
concerned
understand.
about revenues when they're
Right.
charging fees, where's the money going?
So when you see all the off-budget accounts, there's all the, and Acton Library, as you know.
Well, a gift
they-
is a gift, that's.
Right, exactly.
Or more revolving, like a revolving door, because it's, you've got the revenue coming in, but what's being used, to, those expenses that are taking out of that fund.
Didn't,
In essence, you're not really showing the true cost of operation in this budget, not that we're saying it, but it'd be helpful to know, say, they
Years
collected
ago-
100,000 in fees, and out of those fees, 50,000 pays for a secretary. Or, that's sort of
If
the,
they collect 100,000 from insurance companies, I'll bet 99% of it pays clinicians. And
right,
we
well,
can show that.
Right,
And
but
we
I
can
think that's
show
where
that.
Brad's going with that, just to see
Well, and
that,
I
yeah.
sure Heather
I
has
agree,
that
we did
information,
this a couple years ago,
you know?
and we'll do it again. I think it's a good discussion, the board turns over, yeah.
But specifically the Youth and Family Services, they also get a pretty good chunk from United Way.
Yeah.
Right?
And they will use that to fund particular
That's the
programs.
Yeah.
Right,
So it'd be good to know what they're using that to fund.
right. They may hire an intern to do Affordable Care Act enrollment,
Right.
for instance.
But I would suggest you use this as a starting point.
Yeah.
Because that'll give you a
Right.
good handle of what all the different funds are that are off budget, and how much revenue and expenses there have been in every year. They don't change much at the time.
who comes up with, like, they're collecting the revenue, but then we've got the expense over here. Who's coming up with these numbers that, that this thing is at least breaking even or maybe profitable?
Well, I reconcile the bank accounts for these off-budget accounts every month. So I see all the activity, and plus for expenditures, if it's youth and families or police, whoever has, they have to submit check requests in the same fashion that they do on the general fund side. So there's the same,
We use the same
the
system.
same checks and balances, if you will,
right,
for
but-
what the money's spent for. I mean, there's a review process, the selectman reviews it every week, he signs off on the check requests for the off-budget funds as well as the general fund. So it's not just the department that sees the ins and outs. Bob sees the revenue, I see the expenditure, Carl sees the expenditures. So there's a lot of people seeing what's going in and out of
Right.
these
The
funds.
process is the same.
Years ago, didn't they show those monies coming in within the budget as a line item? I thought they did that way back early 2000.
So when you see, but I think it's, it's a mischaracterization to say money's coming in. I don't know how ordinary the revenue is on a lot of these accounts. Youth and Family Services, insurance, the police may do some private or some billing, additional billing. The Board of Ed, I'm sure they can break that out for you right away. I'll bet the numbers are relatively underwhelming in terms of what you're asking, and would you agree with
There's
that?
not a lot of transactions on any one of these accounts.
But I
On a
think,
monthly basis.
not to pick on youth and family, but they're probably, with the insurance money, they could be one of the largest, I don't know.
The 600
I mean, where do we
fund
get our, most of our revenue?
No, Youth and Family Services, in terms of the money that,
on the off-budget
Yeah.
side, yeah, the 600 fund is one of the larger ones. The dog fund has the dog fees coming in and,
Are those license fees that come in as dog fees, is that what you're talking about,
Yeah,
license
that's
fees?
one of them.
right, it's one of them.
Thank you.
I have a question. On the harbor management, I don't see any dollar amounts here, could you explain that to me?
Yes.
And also, on gain on sale of assets, is that a sale of an asset, or is that the gain on the sale of the asset?
That's- Most times it's both.
Okay.
I mean, because what we're selling is worth anything.
Wow.
But seriously, I mean, it's been fully depreciated.
yeah, right.
An old truck or something like that.
Right.
Okay,
Old trucks.
so it's both, the gain and
Okay.
the total. The first one, the whole idea of harbor management's income is mooring fees, okay? And by law, the mooring fees have to go into a special account that's used for maintenance of the docks and things, so that is always non-budget.
And they assisted, yeah, I was gonna say Jerry can answer that question.
Very
I know
good.
it.
They assisted, they put in some extra money for the town dock from that fund, yeah.
Any other questions on this?
And I just want to point out this last sheet that I gave you. The first two columns are just information, so you get a feel for what has happened in past years. Those are the actual revenues from 12-13 and 13-14. For the year that we're in now, the next two columns are what we budgeted for revenue and what I project the actual will be by year end. This particular column, the one where I'm projecting, is this scaled to the end of the year. All right? And given all those numbers, I've now made a projection for what I think our budget recommendation should be on the revenue side. And this includes, now we've gotten the information from CCM and cost to give me the numbers that I put in here under intergovernmental, the state revenues. So this is now up to date as of Friday, and that number at the bottom on the last column, that 2,537,000 will be the other revenue that will go into the calculation of mill rates.
Got it.
Okay? But these categories in local income are the same categories that you'll find in this breakdown today. So you should be able to look at where we stand with respect to what we expect in each category.
Is this above, is that 2 million above the 42 million you've got as projected?
No, that isn't including taxes.
No,
Okay,
This
So
is
that's
everything but taxes.
Okay.
Current taxes.
Remember how when we try to calculate how much the mill rate will be, we figure out how much taxes we need other than these revenues, and then divide it into the grand list, and that's how we get a mill rate.
The grant in lieu of taxes, the increase because of the preserve, from 60 to 88.
Those are numbers that we got just last week.
Right.
Oh, okay, so this
From
is
the
what,
state. But it has nothing to do with
Right.
reserve. no.
We own the preserve in effect, so we won't be getting any.
Well, she's talking about the other half of it is to be owned by the state.
Right, but it's joint ownership.
Right.
We won't likely get any.
Is that I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
I was just wondering why the grant in lieu of taxes, went from 60 to 88, so I was wondering if that is partly because of the preserve. 'cause-
No, in fact, well, you're asking questions that are like,
That's a good.
it's almost prescient because
I bugged your
if you
I
looked at my
bugged your
emails
office.
yesterday and today, okay?
That was why I came in and met with you the other day.
Yeah,
You turned the chair and I put that little,
Good job. Good job.
So, with regard to the preserve, obviously the state wants us to waive any right to ask for payment in lieu of taxes because we're co-owning it with them, okay? And we will do that. I've in turn asked Westbrook, because we're gonna own land in Westbrook, to do the same thing. And that was just today, I had a conversation with Bill Bishop, so. Once a conservation easement goes on the land, in fact, I got the tax bill from Westbrook, it's $2,600 a year for that 4 acres in Westbrook. Once a conservation easement goes on it, it's gonna be worth, there's gonna be probably $500 in taxes. It's worth nothing. It's not, so, but I've still asked them to waive it because the state said if they ask for any payment in lieu of taxes, Westbrook, and if OPM grants it, we want the town to reimburse the state. He wants Old Saybrook. So I've in turn asked Westbrook to do the same thing we're doing, and they're gonna do it. So, we won't be getting any money from the preserve from the state.
No.
That is a definite.
Anything else?
No.
Any other questions for Bob? All right.
Good questions on the other one.
That was easy. Now for the fun part. Mr. Selectman.
Okay. The great thing is I've had an opportunity to meet with 5 of you already in giving you the budget. So I just made some notes. The good thing is a lot of you have had the budget for the weekend, so I've had an opportunity to go through it. The budget is a planning document. I think it sets out a plan. In fact, I think this year in particular really sets out a plan for the next 2 to 5 years. I think the town is really on a very steady path at this point. Business activity is up, and that is a good sign. I'm not saying it's crazy up, but it's up, and that is reflected in the grand list growth. The budget that you're getting, between the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen, I've been involved in probably 15 budgets at this point. In my opinion, well, I can tell you, I think it's one of the easier budgets that I've seen presented. And I'm not just saying that, I'll blame it on Lisa. Lisa did such a good job, how's that? It's the 3rd lowest dollar increase in the last 11 years, and it's the 3rd lowest projected mill rate increase in the last 20 years. The beauty of what I see going forward is the total budget this year, including Board of Ed, including debt service, is projected to be up $1,386,000 approximately. That includes a $347,000 debt payment, which not all of it will go away next year, but a lot of that will go away next year. And that will be the final piece of debt that we've unloaded, and that we will have to unload for a long time. So if we can control Board of Ed's spending to about what they're at right now, town government isn't going to be increasing much beyond the number you see on page 54 in your budget book. And we've done all our capital projects, and I think what the budget does, and to the credit of this Board of Finance over the last 4 years, we funded capital accounts, and we funded the capital non-recurring account. The capital non-recurring account projected right now has about $470,000, give or take in it. Now, we're gonna use it. We're gonna use it in July for the new accounting system, and we're probably gonna use it the following year. But I flat funded the capital non-recurring account this year at $300,000. So even with the expenditures that we might pull out of it, it's a growing account. So when the library needs a new roof, or when youth and family needs major work over there, I gotta come to the board and say, hey, we have a $150,000 project, but we have the money to do it. we're not gonna go to the undesignated fund balance, and we're not gonna go to any year-end surpluses at town meeting, like we've done, and that's not being critical, but that was largely a way a lot of those projects were funded. We have an account which we're gonna fund. Any surpluses at the end of the year, if we're so lucky to have them, should go to the undesignated fund balance to grow the rainy day fund. And we've grown it, and we anticipate if we get some FEMA reimbursement, we'll be over 8%, and we should be over 8%, and we should be between 8 and 10%, more likely. In the sinking fund, you're gonna see that we have continued to fund reval. When I came to office, when I first came into office, I remember Norm Wood stopped me in the hallway and said, I need 200,000 for reval. And I looked at him like, no, what do you, I mean, it was crazy. We're funding it for the next reval. We're putting $50,000 a year in a reval account so that who's ever here in 5 years, whether it's me or somebody else, isn't gonna have to turn and look for the money. It's gonna be there. We're funding heart and hypertension claims to the credit of this Board of Finance. We started off at 20 or 30,000, we brought it to 50, we're at 70. That's an off-budget account that will allow us to pay heart and hypertension claims as they arise. You know, probably one of the biggest increases, I mean, we can go page by page if you want, I don't know how you guys want to do this, but Lisa can probably help us explain more about the pension board. The pension board probably had one of the biggest percentage increases this year. The federal government is requiring all kinds of new guidelines, and that budget has doubled basically in the last 2 years, the pension board. You want to explain
Wow.
again?
What page are we on that? So we're gonna-
I'm just, pension board,
34.
Well, the biggest thing is the actuarial services. And that's because of the new disclosures from the Government Accounting Standards Board. GASB 67 and 68 has totally changed the way we report our pension obligation on our financial statements. So that means more actuarial time.
which is
and-
very
And
expensive.
it's not cheap.
Yeah.
When Steve Lemansky, our actuary, comes to a pension board meeting, it costs $2,500, because he charges like $1,500 an
It's
hour
incredible.
to come to a pension board meeting, so.
He doesn't
luckily,
charge
they only do
$1,500
the-
an hour, but it's a
Wow.
lot of money.
Don't invite him.
I sent Suzanne, I
Yeah.
sent the chairman of the pension board an email, and I said, do not invite him to meetings unless it's an absolute necessity, because you're going over your budget this year.
Right,
Um,
and if you've noticed in the current year's budget, they're already overexpended totally, because they had the fire, or they redid the fire pension plan this year. Anytime they do something with one of the plans, it requires the actuary to get involved, and it's very expensive. So, I think it's a very realistic budget, but it is, I mean, they're a small budget dollar amount wise, but it's a dramatic increase percentage wise because of the disclosures they need to do with the actuaries.
So that's the pension board. We've increased a couple things. We've increased IT 25 to 30 hours a week. That's Larry Hayden. I can assure you it's needed, necessary, and getting bang for the buck there. The Catherine Hepburn Cultural Arts Center, when we came in 4 years ago, that budget was at $20,000. We're still catching up. I think this year's budget will, quite frankly, fund it to where it should be. The police budget is up 4.9%, you'll see in here. Probably the biggest, and I pointed this out to a few of you already, probably the biggest change in the police budget. And what I've passed on to you is the chief, as you know, has asked for a full-time assistant, and he asked for a full-time records clerk. I've passed on to you a full-time assistant for the chief of police, but not a full-time records clerk. The one other big change in the police budget is Sergeant Gardner used to do IT, and many, as you all know, he no longer is a police officer, I believe, right? He's no longer a police officer. Is that part-time? Okay, well.
He's still officially certified police officer.
Yeah, he is that. So, the chief of police has him as a consultant right now for $45,000. IT, that's what he's proposing. An IT consultant for $45,000, and that patrol position gets filled. We've all talked about civilianizing the IT in the police department. I've had very preliminary discussions with the chief about doing that. If we were to bring IT under town hall umbrella, the police, removing that $45,000 from the police budget puts the police budget at 3.5% increase year over year. If you remove IT and put it in town hall. With it, it's 4.9%. And I thought that was an interesting illustration because we don't disagree that IT is needed at the police department, and we have had the discussion about civilianizing IT. If we were to do that, I would ask you to give me time to come up with an agreement, a memorandum of understanding with the chief before we did anything like that. I don't know that we're ready to do that by July 1, but it's something that can be considered. Total IT for the town, other than Board of Ed, is about $90,000 between that position and our position. I've looked at the CCM salary survey, and if you look at towns that are our size and bigger, they have all of $90,000 in IT. We're doing pretty well on the IT side in terms of maximizing resources for what we pay.
Are the other towns putting their police department in their IT function as well?
You know, Barry, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
It's hard to tell by the
Yeah.
way the survey's laid out.
But it just says IT information, you know. So, town hall. I'll move on to the town hall budget. We budgeted in all the budgets about a 10% increase in CLMP. You guys all know there was a CLMP increase. So you'll see an increase in energy or CLMP for all the budgets. One other thing.
And do you, for electricity like CLMP, do you shop around, basically, and use a different, okay.
Yes. In fact, we're on a 3-year contract right now, which expires June 30th. I'm actually about to, I had a conversation today, again, I swear to God, it's not even, with a broker, and I think we're going to go out to bid with Lime, Old Lime, the school district over there, so that we can go out as a package, and we're gonna go out to bid sometime in April, and we'll see what the prices are, but it could be a year, it could be 2 years, it could be 27 months, it could be 3 years, depending on the price. So we do bid for energy, and we do an auction. We go to auction with that. But you have to be a certain size to go to auction, so we're looking at doing that. In the town hall budget, there is a placeholder for a facilities manager. $20,000, and that's under the town hall budget, and that's why the town hall budget, which I'm not looking at pages here, but that's why the town hall budget is up percentage-wise a little bit more than you would expect. The idea would be to have a facilities manager, probably part-time, start January 1 of 2016, fund another $20,000 in July 1, 2016, and that person would then be at about 25 to 30 hours a week, a $40,000 a year position. I can't tell you how many times I get a call from Youth and Family Services, or the library. The library calls Wayne Wysocki when there's an issue over there. When Wayne gets called in, it's 4 hours of overtime.
And he still has to call in a contract.
And then he calls in a contractor, right? The idea is to house all the warranties and all the facilities, all the HVAC equipment under one roof, under one person who has a skill set. And we will advertise and interview for this position, just like we've done with every other position, and we've had great success doing that. We are not gonna hire someone who is, just because we think they might be the right person. We've had very good luck advertising and setting up panel interviews. The facilities manager could extend his coverage to vehicles in the town, but.
Next question.
What?
That was my next question, okay.
Yeah,
So is
vehicles,
that in the personnel line item?
where is it, Lisa? I didn't
In
even-
town hall, page 46,
Yeah,
in the personnel line item.
so it's in that number,
Yeah,
40.
that's why they're up 16%, because,
So if that wasn't in there, you'd have a reduction in personnel? Dollars?
No,
no,
it'd be
it would be
175.
175. It was 168, it's 168 this year.
It's only talking 20,000.
20, okay, I thought you said 40.
So, I'm proposing that, and I can get you we have a job description, and we have a job description, I'm happy to share.
I'd like to see a reporting structure and what that person will be responsible for.
Yeah, that's fine, why don't I email the Board of Finance, I'll email it to Jerry, and you can look at the job description for.
And he would be responsible for all town buildings, including the Board of Ed?
No, it will not be Board of Ed.
Not the Board.
Julie is a facilities manager over there. You know, look, at some point, could we combine when the timing is right? Yes. We could. This would be just town side.
By the way, do we have a list of all the things we were gonna get, all our assets, cars and everything at one point? Do we have a list of everything that person
Oh,
will
you
be
mean like,
responsible for?
no, we don't have that. I mean, we do have a list of vehicles in our accounting
At
system.
one point, we were gonna add and get all the assets, so we knew what they were. That was a long time ago,
I mean,
but
we
then
do
Howard
have
gave you about 6 different hats to wear.
Right, we
so-
do have a list in the accounting system, it does need to be cleaned up, and, you know, since I've gotten here, I wanted to have a physical inventory, but haven't gotten to that yet.
So, in the tree budget, I actually added 5,000 for tree removal. We could probably have a tree removal budget of 50,000 in this town, between tree removal and putting trees in the ground. There's so many.
How long is your list? I mean, you said you got 50 and you're cutting out. How far does
We
the
could
list go down?
we could probably remove 30. The problem is you have a lot of people who want you to replace the trees too, but we're not even in that mode yet. We're catching up in terms of removing dead trees. And by the way, pruning trees, we could spend $30,000 a year pruning trees.
It's easier to take.
Look around, drive down any street. There's a maple tree right in front of my house.
Don't do that one first, Carl.
No. No, but we don't, Barry, we do not prune trees at all. We just take them down because we're still catching up on the list. And we don't plant trees for the most part. So I shouldn't say that in front of Bob. Bob's probably, no. So the budget that you're getting tonight reflects a 0.3 of a mil increase. Bear in mind that the revenue that Bob has projected is without the preserve or with the preserve in it.
You mean the building, the house you're gonna sell?
No, the preserve revenue.
grand
No,
list.
I'm talking about on the grand list for next year, doesn't it?
It doesn't include what was revenue in the past.
Which was about $120,000. So you're seeing a dip in that revenue.
Well, the grand list went up 1%, right?
Yeah, went up about 0.16, I think.
I think I calculated that to be like $651,000.
Yeah, it's significant growth, and it is. I mean, and that's the whole idea, right? Grow the grand list and control your expenditures. So we're seeing good grand list growth. It's 0.3 of a mil. I don't ever remember being presented with that, other than when the town hall employees took 0 in those 2 years. Bob knows historically, I have, and it's kind of interesting information from a historical point of view, to look at the mill rate increases over the last 20 years. I'm not suggesting it's good or bad, but it's somewhere between 0.4 and 1 of mill for the last 20 years. This is 0.3, that's your starting point. To get below that, you could possibly add some revenue to the budget. We do have a house at 185 Bochum Road that we're going to sell at some point. Not this spring, maybe this fall. I wouldn't suggest taking a lot of extra revenue because I don't know that you need it this year. I'd like to be able to hold some of that for next year also. But I would, if you put 50,000 into this budget from either land acquisition fund or from undesignated fund balance, when that house is sold, the money will go back to whatever fund you have chosen to take it from. I'll tell you what, when we got the numbers, when Bob finally gave me the numbers and we worked on the actual budget for a final presentation, I was actually pretty happy, I have to tell you. I mean, I think we start off in a really good place. $1.3 million increase includes, like I said, about $350,000 in debt, of which a lot of that is the preserve. If you go back 10 years, you go back to 2005, 6, there were 4 consecutive years of $1.4 to $1.8 million increases. I mean, so you're at $1.3 million this year, which is lower than you've seen 10, 12 years ago. And next year, what I'm saying about the trajectory is we're done. We're done with our capital projects. I anticipate budgets to be, right, 1 to 1.1, it should be somewhere in there, should be the sweet spot, given what we've done over the last 4 years in building up our capital accounts, our capital non-recurring accounts, and I think right-sizing the budgets to where they should be. You're gonna have a lot more questions about the budget. Some of you have seen it. Greg hasn't seen it before tonight. I don't know when you plan on meeting next, but I don't know what other highlights there are in the budget. I mean, a lot of it, one thing you should know, a lot of there are 9 land use departments. What Christine did is she pulled the postage out of all her departments and put it in her land use. So inland wetlands no longer has a postage account. Zoning doesn't have postage. It all went into the land use budget. So you'll see a bigger increase there, and that's why you see some negatives in those land use budgets. So you should note that too. I think zoning asked for a legal increase. That was another line item change. Jerry's on zoning, and she sees what goes on with the legal stuff. But those are just some of the themed highlights. A lot of our political subdivisions, they keep asking for more money. The Estuary Council of Seniors asked for $6,000 extra. What am I going to do? They're losing grant money. They could close in theory if they don't get grant money. Right, Jerry,
I'm president of that board.
we
and
fully funded it this year.
Good.
Okay, we gave you
Because you're
the money.
short of us.
We did. Right, you're right. I did.
I know, I wanted to kill you.
The estuary,
Jerry, watch out.
the estuary transit district is another. You see all the green buses flying around. We're part of that. That's a 9-town transit. We fully funded them. Those are things you're not going to cut, and they're not small numbers.
Do you want to talk about the Boy Scouts? That's new this year.
In political subdivisions,
I almost asked about that too.
What?
I almost asked about the Boy Scouts.
You what?
I almost asked
Jim
about
was
the Boy
yeah.
Scouts.
All right, the Boy Scouts. In political subdivisions, we put a few dollars in there. 3,000 was it? 3,500 or 25? What?
3,000.
3,000. So the Boy Scouts get a lot of can money at the transfer station. And I'm trying to eliminate the Boy Scouts at the transfer station. Because I want to redo the transfer station, as so many of you know. But they rely on this funding from collecting cans for about $3,000 to $4,000 worth of revenue. So Sarah, the organization that employs intellectually, I believe disabled, challenged adults, is gonna put 2 yellow bins in there, and they're gonna collect the cans and remove the cans. And that's what you're gonna do at the transfer station. And to hold the Boy Scouts harmless, I put in $3,000 for the Boy Scouts. Part of the plan being we have to eliminate the Boy Scouts from the transfer station because it's not safe, to be honest with you. It isn't safe, and it's unsightly going on over there. And I did contact Jeff Jacobson's office, our town engineer, to try to drop a whole new plan for the transfer station because I'm disgusted with what's going on over there. And I've talked to Barry about it, talked to John about it, talked to a bunch of you about it. That will be a project that will be funded this year. I can talk to you about the funding. We're not there yet, but I did talk to Jeff about starting up a project and redoing the whole thing. And the Boy Scouts have had a lot to do with that transfer station. Dave, you might know that. They built that little shed. When you drive in, the shed to the left that houses the cans and I think the oil and the batteries, they built that. So they've had a lot to do there. So to just say to them, you can't collect the cans at the transfer station anymore. But what I've asked from them is community service, community projects. In return for that, I think maybe the Causeway, maybe a few other
Pavilion
things.
at the beach.
The pavilion at the beach is a project that I already have a design on, and we're in front of zoning on that to redo the whole pavilion.
So when you say we're done with the capital projects, we're not really done with the capital projects. You got the transfer station.
No.
you got
I mean,
the-
but we're done with bonding capital
okay.
projects. How's that? No, there's going to continually be capital projects, but we should be able to pay for them out of the capital non-recurring account, which we're gonna flat fund at $300,000 a year. And I think that is going to be a great fund to make some really terrific improvements in this town.
I like the idea of flat funding it, but does it make sense to
Add something to it.
increase it 5% a year?
I don't,
or
well,
Some small percentage
You know,
per year?
Dave, if
just
you're
to
putting
increase it?
300 into it every year, we have almost 500 in it right
As long
now.
as we don't spend it as quickly as we put it in.
Yeah, I'm not recommending it this year, it's your call, I'm not recommending it. I think come July 1, 2015, that fund is gonna be extraordinarily healthy. Any transfer station project would be done over probably more than 1 year,
Mhm.
and I can't imagine it would exceed $300,000 in any given year.
Right.
Not,
Right.
okay, so, and the accounting software is, if it's a $120,000 item over 2 years, there's not a lot of items that I'm seeing, but I think ultimately what you want that money for is damage to a building. You know, if you have major damage, roof damage to the Youth and Family Services building, or they need, you're gonna want that money, and we have a place to go for it, as opposed to hurting our capital, our undesignated fund balance, and taking the money from there. And that was when I was chairman, last year on the Board of Finance, last year as chairman,
Like 75.
we started that account at $75,000. And here we are, 4 years later, and we've accomplished, I think, what we set out to do. And I think we did it in some tough years too.
Carl, wasn't there already some renderings or drawings made up for the transfer station in order to be in compliance with DEPs, so that everything
There were
is covered and everything?
Those were recommendations, not drawings.
There was never any renderings made or drawings to show what was going on up there?
No, just canopy,
They're
cover
just looking at
everything.
water runoff, actually, what they're looking at.
Paving, they wanted paving so nothing gets through the cracks, and
So we're not having Jacobs do something that's already done again?
we are not.
Okay.
In fact, what we would probably do is address many of those items that Jacobson noted on that report. We would probably be able to do that with this project. It's a tough design up there. Look, the transfers, Bob, when did we open up there?
Wow.
Was it 76 or so?
It was back in the 70s, yeah.
It's time for a relook. It sits on an aquifer, and we have problems there. So it's time for a relook, and now is the time. And I'll bring that to you, probably outside of the budget season, I'll bring it to you, and we'll talk about it.
Carl, on like the Memorial Day parade, Torchlight
I'm
Parade.
sorry, I'm not, but,
On like, so Family Day, so just for instance, like Family Day, Memorial Day, Torchlight, those are more events.
yes. Is that under political subdivisions,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
I guess, I always assumed that Family Day was funded out of Youth and Family Services.
So Family Day,
And Memorial and Torchlight were
what
funded
page,
out of
what page are you on?
38.
38.
We're sort of funded out of the selectmen's budget.
Yeah. Those are, let's see, Family Fun Day. So we buy hot dogs and rolls, and that does come from the selectmen's budget. Yeah, I mean,
I think there are other costs that Youth and Family picks. I don't think that's the total cost of the event.
it's not.
That's our, that's the
Could that be
town's
under our
contribution.
budget? It could be, you know, I suppose.
I was just curious,
Yeah.
there are more events rather than organizations per se.
The Memorial Day Parade is to pay for overtime for, mainly for policing, I believe, as is the Torchlight.
Isn't that in the chief's budget though, to pay for community events?
You know what,
The,
I don't.
the police manpower is in his budget. This is for things like,
Is it?
Yeah.
like the Torchlight Parade, I think the torches, things like that,
tents.
some of the tents and.
Yeah, that's right, the 10 on the town green. I'm not
Miscellaneous.
even, I could look at it, I could pull that.
It's only 3,000.
Yeah, but any of the police, for any of those events is in the police budget in the community.
The political subdivisions is kind of an interesting
It's not a great term for.
category,
there's-
it's not.
Because there are political
it's a real mix.
organizations in there, but there's charitable organizations in there, like the Shoreline Soup Kitchen, and that's been in there for forever
So-
and ever.
Yeah, and those have been just picked, you know, Shoreline Soup Kitchen, why should we fund them over, and I'm not saying we shouldn't fund them, but why should we fund them over another organization? It's just what we've done. What?
Everybody funds
Yeah,
the Shoreline.
but-
Yeah.
There's a lot of choices you make.
Yeah.
Just one other cautionary note. So Bob has shown you the revenue that CCM and cost has projected. And the governor's budget held the town of Old Saybrook harmless, so we did all right. So I was up at the Capitol last Wednesday and I ran into Paul Formica, Senator Paul Formica, former first selectman in East Lyme. And Paul said, this, and you probably can say this every year about the governor's budget. He said, this budget is so resoundingly, universally disliked that he thinks the governor just put it out there to make the legislature raise taxes or come back at the towns and cut revenue. So, Bob gave you the revenue, we could get cut. And if we get cut, it could be 50 to 100 grand. I mean, just bear that in mind, that they will not have a budget until we voted.
That's always the case.
Yeah, right. They won't have a budget until we voted, and don't expect, it's not a guarantee that Old Saybrook will be held harmless in this budget on revenue from the state. And that was a warning by Paul Formica, and just read the Hartford Courant, read any of the newspapers. There's every interest, the registrars are up in arms of all the, every group is up in arms over this budget. I'm not. I'm pretty happy with it right now, but.
Well, Old Saybrook doesn't count on very much
Right.
Right,
revenue from
yeah,
the
but,
state.
I mean, 100,000's 100,000,
Yeah.
okay? So, and a lot of the smaller towns with resident state trooper programs have projected to be really badly hurt because they're asking for a lot more funding from those towns. So the towns without a police department this year are really targeted by the government. And those towns are screaming.
Yeah, but right now, a lot of that's funded by the state. In all fairness.
70% is funded, 70% is funded by the towns and 30% by the state.
Is it 70/30?
And the state is projecting, is saying, we're gonna take the extra 30% away right now. And the first selectman in Westbrook told me that's 150,000 to them. It's a big number. Imagine what it is to Killingworth, you know, I mean, it's a big number. So, that is gonna go, I guarantee you that won't go through. In fact, that's my opinion, that won't go through. So, where do they go next? You know, do they raise taxes, or do they cut road aid to the towns, or do they, so I'm just telling you, be careful with the budget. Let's see, so, anyway, take a look at that, and,
Any questions for Carl?
The capital requests, Carl, are those all just requests or those approved requests?
so Barry, what I think you should do is go to page, in the
I didn't
first.
get a chance to look at it.
Those
in
are all the
detail, so-
requests that were
Yeah,
made.
so the
They're
first-
not all in the selectmen's
Page
budget,
54,
so they're-
page 54 of your budget, you'll see the adjustments that were made and voted on by the Board of Selectmen. And most of those capital requests are in parentheses, which means they've been reduced or cut out. So a lot of those capital requests, Barry, are wish lists, okay? I mean,
You know what I'd like to see on those? I'd like them to prioritize which ones are first in your wish list.
yeah.
Because we get a list, and what's really needed first, second, third, fourth? And we got, with this big loader's been there, $315,000 a year.
What has been?
This big loader that Larry's got in there.
Oh, yeah, that's.
Eventually
that's
you're gonna
his
need one. Are we
first-
funding for it?
That's
We're
his
looking at
first, that's his first
The loader
request.
is his first priority, that's. he's
So
been
I would
trying
like to
put
just
it
see them-
together.
see-
Just now?
everybody's priorities, and have you guys prioritize everybody's together, so we know what we're looking
Yeah,
at.
well, yeah, unfortunately, they give you your first priority, but not much deeper
Yeah.
than that. But you make a good point, because it's, you could throw a bunch of things in,
It's
How
easy
you
to cut
supposed
them
to know
off.
Yeah, it's like throwing it against the wall, see which one sticks. I mean,
yeah,
What's
and when
the-
they're that costly, it's
Well,
difficult.
but another thing we've done with capital, with Public Works is we started a sinking fund. It makes sense. I mean, think about Public Works. They need to replace plows, they need to replace pickup trucks. I mean, there should be a sinking fund, and we've increased it. We went from 50 to 60 this year?
40 to 50.
40 to 50.
no, I understand that, I
Yeah.
understand they need to do that, but I would like to see priorities and how they're running it, and how maybe the facilities guy would help, but
Exactly. I mean, no, that's exactly right, Barry. That's exactly right.
That's a
guy or
good-
gal, I should say.
It's a good question, bring Larry in and talk to
We're
Larry.
on the public works subgroup.
Good pickup.
I don't want a job.
Brad's posing.
Just doing this job is enough for me.
The Marine Patrol boat, is that functional right now or unfunctional?
Excuse me?
The Marine Patrol boat, is it functionable or does that
It's out of the water right now.
No, I understand that, but if you were to put it in water, will it work?
We hope so.
Okay, no, I mean, somebody was talking about having it towed in, and I just didn't
It's
know.
been towed in this past season,
Right, and is it repaired and it's okay?
as far as to my knowledge, yes.
Did they ever do a survey on that boat by a professional?
You wouldn't want us to.
And then how old are the engines on that boat?
Were they just rebuilt?
Yeah, we bought
3
rebuilt
years,
motors
5
in
years?
2012 when we started this, and then I think they're about 800 hours now, so we probably have 2 more years or so on that motor before they need replacement.
Any other questions for Carl?
Never mind, I'll just put on questions.
Oh, okay.
I figure people are gonna
Wow,
hear
yes.
so.
Yep. Carl, anything else?
You know, other projects that we'll look at post-budget is, we're gonna look at the LED streetlight thing again, and that would perhaps be something late, you know, some good summer project maybe. I'm still waiting for other towns to kind of make the leap. But they are doing it. There's a lot of momentum going on with the streetlight conversion, but nothing, for this budget, just take a look at it. I feel really good about it, to be honest with you. I really do. I think it starts in a good place. I think Lisa feels the same way, and Bob too. I mean, just historically, the numbers are good here. So.
Nothing more for Carl, but I did pass something out, so I don't know if you want to talk about it during public comment or before.
Is there any public comment?
Okay, you want me to talk about it now, or?
You go right ahead.
Okay. I passed out a couple of sheets here, I think most everybody had, but I brought in
Please.
10, I don't, yeah, great. And one of them was, that I requested the board members review that, and the next time we meet, it's a proposal, a recommendation that we have the selectman's office start to review past and future grant applications, so that
Can I see, can I copy that?
we don't get short-sighted
You
on
don't copy that?
different commissions and boards and special interest groups applying for things that obligate the town without full transparency to the public and their support. So that I passed out, and then I passed out a copy of the town of Westbrook in reference to their disposal of property.
I need to copy.
And
I think Jerry's making copies.
something to consider for the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, so that we have a standardized method when we dispose of property belonging to the town. And Finance Director gets involved, and the Selectmen's Office, and there's a procedure set up for that individuals from different boards, commissions, and/or town employees have a method to start the process to dispose of town equipment. And it's recorded, and there's a logging of it, so that the money is collected and so noted in a manner that accounts for the item that's being traded or turned in or sold, which may be assistance to the selectman's office. So that's why I brought it in. I'm not sure if you've seen it before, but it's all of us to start to think about that accountability of all the property that belongs to the town.
Did you get both of these, Carl?
I did, yeah.
I got the first one, and
She's
you need
making
the second one.
copies.
It's coming.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from anyone?
What are we gonna do? We're gonna talk about it?
So our next meeting is 2 weeks from today, as usual, which will be the 17th. Our public hearing is April 7th. And we'll have a budget to the selectmen on the 17th, 10 days after the public hearing. So, the point is, if there's anyone you want to see, tell me. If you have anyone you want to come in, tell me. If you feel that we should have additional special meetings, tell me. If you feel that we should start earlier, let me know.
That's not happening.
I won't know unless you tell me. I will invite the larger department heads, or the department heads of larger departments.
I got that.
And to talk to us, but if there's someone else you'd like to see, yes.
You gonna bring the green beer for after the meeting? That's St. Patrick's Day, you know.
If you want to bring green beer, you go right ahead.
Is there anyone special that we're going to invite to the next meeting?
Is there anyone special you'd like to invite to the next meeting?
Didn't we ask for some people to come before us before, but they never showed up?
Yeah, but they were plowing snow and
Yeah,
doing other
Oh,
things.
yeah, but that was in budget discussion and stuff.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, I was wondering if any of those people are the same people that we need to have them come forward again.
Can I have time to look over the budget a little more before I tell you?
Yeah. You can email me, you can call me. And we'll go from there, I'll let you know.
Okay.
What did you
So
say?
you're not going to have a meeting next week?
We're not gonna have a meeting this week.
Okay.
We'll have a
Just
meeting
the
on the
regular
17th.
meeting.
Okay. Very good.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Oh, I have the Board of Ed budget. Good call.
Second.
Second.
Brad.